So many permissions. All right, awesome. Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, spending part of your Wednesday night with us. Tonight we have Maddy Jones with us, and so Maddy's going to take over most of the training tonight and share with you a little bit about breathwork and meditation, and using those tools to help lower cortisol, which we actually have been talking about cortisol in our group a ton for this is going on like 6 weeks now. So this is perfect. It just kind of ties right into everything. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Maddy. And I'll just kind of let you take over.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks, Clarissa, for having me on today. Like she was saying, my name is Maddy, and I am a yoga, breathwork, mindfulness coach. And I got into this space because when I was younger, I struggled with chronic anxiety and depression and was just super overwhelmed and needed some sort of tools to help myself out. And this was like my saving grace was going down this path of yoga healing modalities. And so that kind of, there's been different avenues between now and then, but that's the short story of how I got to where I am today. And so today I know that we want to talk about self-sabotage a bit, right? Because that's something I think is super applicable, especially for people who are working on any sort of fitness or nutrition goal. Self-sabotage is definitely a big thing that happens to a lot of people. So we'll be diving into that today. And if you guys have any questions while I'm talking, feel free to just type them in the chat so I can know what they are and I can answer them. So we self-sabotage because our ego is trying to protect us, which is actually kind of sweet if you think of it like that. But of course, we don't want to self-sabotage. And the problem is that our subconscious mind does not know the difference between what's good and what's bad. It just knows what's familiar and what's unfamiliar. So even if a bad habit, something you're wanting to break, it's familiar to you. So your subconscious mind thinks this is a safer choice. Then maybe you're trying to create a new behavior, which is not familiar to subconscious mind, and it might seem like a threat. And so that could be a little problematic when we're trying to break these things down. So this first practice I'm going to give to you, it might sound a little silly, but it's really effective. And it's to name your ego. And so I want anyone who's here live right now to just think of a name. It could be any name that pops up. It could be a fictional character. It could be a fantasy name. It doesn't even have to be like a real human name. My partner's name for his ego was the Warp at one point. So it's not even like a real human name. Mine, it's Brittany. When my teacher first gave me this assignment, it's Brittany, bitch, kept on ringing like so clear in my head. And I was like, no, it's not Brittany. Think it's something better. But no, I was like, no, bitch, it's Brittany. So whatever like name is popping in your mind right now, for those of you who are here, I would love for you guys to type in the chat what your ego's name is. You could, of course, change it if a better one pops up, but name your ego. And this is going to be really helpful for you to begin to have this inner dialogue between your higher self and your ego, and kind of take a moment to pause before you take action on things. So that way you can really reflect and be like, ooh, is this a choice of my ego, or is this a choice of my higher self? And so, for example, maybe you had a stressful day at work, and you know that you're supposed to go work out, but instead you're like, ooh, I want to binge on ice cream, right? Even though you know that the workout would help you feel way better afterwards and during, and really help release that stress in a healthy way. And then after eating the bucket of ice cream, you'll probably feel really crappy, be off track with your goals. The ego kind of hijacks in this way. It's like, nah, skip your workout. It's been a hard day. Like, eat the ice cream. And so in the short term, we have this quick fix where we're eating it and it tastes good and we're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But in the long term, when we have the stomach ache and we realize we missed our workout and we're 1,000 calories over our total for the day, then we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Why did I do this? So there's a lot of power in the pause and beginning to learn your behaviors and beginning to actually have this inner dialogue in your head with yourself, your ego versus your higher self. And we all have that little voice in our head, right? Like when we're going to wake up in the morning and our alarm goes off and there's that little voice that's like, sleep in. right? So there's all this little voice that happens. And sometimes it could be a little bit extra challenging if we are attacking ourselves so harshly, like, oh, why do I suck? Why am I always a bad guy? Like, and just you can be really nasty towards yourself for these behaviors that we do. So this is why it's kind of helpful to name your ego. It's like still a part of yourself, but it's not quite your full identity. It's something slightly outside of yourself. And so it makes it a little less personal of attack and a little bit more playful of a way of being able to identify that self that makes you want to self-sabotage. So, Brittany, get out of here. Like, I'm over your games. So now comes power in the pause. And so before you do anything, I want you to take a moment to pause and take 3 mindful breaths. So we'll take 3 yogic breaths together, just so you guys could experience what that breath is like. You could sit up tall, you could close your eyes. In real world scenarios, you could, of course, keep your eyes open if you can't close the eyes. But take a deep inhale through your nose, expand your belly, fill up your heart space, see more air into your collarbones. Exhale, relax your shoulders, empty your chest, empty your belly. Deep inhale, belly, chest, collarbones. Exhale, shoulders, chest, low tummy. Take a full breath in, feel your rib cage expand from top to bottom, side to side, front to back. Let a complete breath go, feel your rib cage pull into your core center. Now you can just breathe normally and open your eyes. And whether you're watching this live or the replay, let us know how you feel after taking just 3 deep breaths.
That's pretty amazing.
I'd love to hear. Right? And so that just took a couple of seconds, you guys. And so a lot of times we're like, oh, I don't have the time. But it's like that took a couple of seconds. We do have the time. And it doesn't have to be this big elaborate thing. It could be something as simple as 3 deep breaths. So it gets even more powerful than you think. There's been a lot of really cool research coming out in the past 2019, 2020, 2021 on the benefits of mindful yogic breathing and mindfulness as an intervention for people with substance abuse disorder and addiction and helping them with their recovery. And what the research has been showing is that mindful yogic breathing has been showing to be even more effective than cognitive behavioral therapy at helping people breaking their addictions. There's a specific study that saw a really significant, like higher increase of the benefits of mindful yogic breathing than the cognitive behavioral therapies, and quitting cigarette smoking, which is one of the most addictive substances out there. So if we could utilize mindful yogic breathing to help us quit cigarettes, help us quit other drugs, and help us stop drinking alcohol, I'm certain that you could also use mindful yogic breathing to help you stop your self-sabotaging behaviors, because that's not as bad as quitting a cigarette. I can guarantee you that. So for those of you who are like, I don't know, like 3 breaths was nice, that was good, maybe you're a little skeptical, maybe now you're like, oh wait, maybe I should do this pause and breathing thing a little bit more. And so take that moment to pause and breathe deeply. Take 3 breaths and then ask yourself, is what I'm about to do in alignment with what my higher self would be doing? Or is it in alignment of what my ego is making me want to do, right? And sometimes your ego might try to hijack the system. Like if you plan to wake up early to go work out, your ego might be like, oh, but your soul needs more sleep. You're so tired. But that's when you could begin to really call them out. Like, no, Brittany, like, I know that's actually you, and my soul got plenty of sleep and I'm ready to go to my workout. So take those 3 deep breaths and then ask, is this a desire? Is this something my higher self would be doing? Or is this a behavior of the ego? That's something that's going to self-sabotage me, that I'm going to regret later. And then can you make the choice to align with your higher self more than making a choice to align with what your ego is making you want to do? To take this a step further and to be sort of brutally awaken yourself, I want you guys to practice journaling about every time that you choose to align with your higher self. and also every time that you choose to fall in the ego and self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. And this will help build your awareness of what's going on and what's creating the self-sabotaging behaviors in the first place. So based on whatever happened, you could write out, this is what happened today, this is how it made me feel, and this is what I did, and this is what I did afterwards. So maybe, for example, we say, I had a really stressful day at work and I ended up having to stay overtime. And this made me feel super overwhelmed and anxious. So instead of going and doing something that was better for myself that I was planning on doing, or really anything else, I decided to go and eat a bucket of ice cream while I binged watched TikTok and got into the scroll hole. And in the moment of binging my ice cream and scrolling on TikTok, I was feeling great. Like I was getting that dopamine hit, everything was tasting good, I was laughing. But then hours later, when my eyes hurt because I've been staring at my phone for so long and my stomach ached, and I realized I didn't do anything and I didn't even eat my dinner because I ate so much ice cream and I'm super off track now. Now I'm beating myself up because I self-sabotaged, right? And so the more that you journal about this every single time, it's kind of bringing this brutal awareness to like, why am I doing this? Until you're like, I'm not going to do that anymore. And then on the other hand, if you also, and you really want to reflect on when you do well too, we don't only want to focus on the bad, we want to focus on the good. If you could reflect on like, okay, today I had a stressful day at work because my boss was yelling at me and because I made a really big mistake and this made me feel super bad and I was beating myself up. And I realized that like my ego made me want to go and self-soothe with ice cream. And instead I decided that I was going to go do a workout and then meditate afterwards. And during my workout and afterwards, I felt so good. And then meditating, I was able to like find that peace after I got some movement in. And so I felt good right away and I felt good afterwards and I felt good all night long. And I woke up the next morning feeling great. This awareness is really huge, you guys, because when you continuously are bringing your conscious awareness to your behaviors instead of doing behaviors subconsciously, this is where you take your power back. And when you bring your conscious awareness to, ooh, this is what I'm doing, and this makes me not only feel good long-term, but long-lasting, and it helps me when I'm not feeling good. Maybe I want to start doing these things more. And these are things that I do when I'm not feeling good, and they make me feel good in the short term, but they make me feel really bad long-term. Okay, maybe I should start doing more of the things that make me feel good right away and long-term. And the more that you continue to do this, the more you won't even crave the things that you used to crave. You'll have no desire for them anymore. And you'll want the things that you are desiring. I'll be honest about myself. I used to be a total substance abuse person and total alcoholic. I've been sober for almost 5 years now, and I have no problem being around people who drink. And people are like, wow, that's so impressive. How can you do that? And I'm like, because I have literally no desire for that substance anymore, because everything that I use for myself to feel good makes me feel so much better than that substance ever did. So like, it's not desirable at all. Whereas before I used to be drunk all the time. So it's a powerful, very powerful method, but you have to do the work and you have to be really honest with yourself when you are messing up and doing that reflection, but also do the reflection on the good things. We want to spend more of our attention, more of our nourishment on the good. So to help you guys make better choices, I'm going to encourage you to write diversion tactic is what it's called. Write down a bunch of things that help you feel good and are in alignment with your goals. They help you feel good right away and long lasting. So maybe some of these things might be working out, going on a walk, taking a bubble bath, doing yoga, breath work, meditating, journaling. You get the gist, right? These things that immediately, as soon as you go outside and you're feeling the fresh air, you're like, oh, I feel a lot better. And then you finish your walk, you're like, oh, that was so needed, right? These things help you feel good right away and long lasting. Keep that list somewhere easy access, like put it in your phone notes. That way you could just search diversion tactics. You could see it. You could put it on a sticky note where you work. So if you notice that you're always stressed after work and that's when you go self-sabotage it afterwards, you see the diversion list, you're like, oh yeah, let me pick one of those. And so that way, whenever you realize that you're getting into the behaviors that happened before the self-sabotage events, then you could be aware like, ooh, okay, I am feeling stressed at work. My boss is yelling at me. Normally when this happens, I self-sabotage. So instead of self-sabotaging, I'm going to use one of these diversion tactics to help me feel good in the long run of things, which is really important. Does anyone have any questions so far?
We don't have any in the chat here. We have some ego names.
Yeah, I want to hear.
So we have Lottie says hers is Mabel, and Lori says hers is Wanda. There's quite a few people watching on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook and you have questions, just go ahead and drop them in the chat and we'll definitely get them answered.
Awesome. I love that. Are we familiar with habit and behavior change, or should I go over that a little bit?
You can go over that. I mean, we work on that inside of the coaching program, but definitely not all of these people are clients now.
Cool. So I'll go over that a little bit, because sometimes we might like self-sabotage in a way because we're not actually understanding the habit and behavior change process. And so a lot of times people think when we're trying to create a new habit, we need more brute force, we need to be more disciplined. And like, that's not really always the case. And a lot of times it's because you're missing one of the key elements of behavior. So the anatomy of a habit, I like to look at it like a triangle. So there is the routine behavior, something that you do already, that's a habit. You don't have to think about it. You get out of bed, you brush your teeth. If you're a coffee drinker, you drink your coffee. Like, these things we don't have to think about. We're going to do them regardless of whether someone tells us to or not. Then we need to have a cue or a trigger. This is something that tells you to do this new thing now. And then the last part is the reward. The reward that maybe you feel the sense of fulfillment. You are on track with your goals, right? It made you feel really good. So if we're missing any parts of this, we're probably not going to be following through with the new habits and behaviors that we're wanting to create. And that might be a self-sabotage in itself, and it's simply because you don't understand habit and behavior change. So let's use an example of maybe you're wanting to start writing your intentions for the day in the morning. And let's say you're a coffee drinker. So the behavior that we would want to stack it with that makes sense would be when you drink your morning cup of coffee. If you're running to write it in the morning, you're already a coffee drinker. No one's going to have to hold a gun to your head and tell you, don't forget your cup of coffee in the morning if you're already a coffee drinker. And so with this, you want to make sure that you don't just say, okay, I'm going to do it when I have my morning cup of coffee, because chances are when you go to have your morning cup of coffee, you haven't been writing intentions already. So you're probably going to forget about it. So you need to have the cue or the trigger that tells you, do this thing now. So maybe if you put a intention setting journal and pen right by your coffee pot, then when you wake up, you're all tired, you go to make coffee, you see your intention setting journal and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I want to write intentions. So then you write your intentions while you enjoy your cup of coffee. And then later you get the reward because you wrote your intentions and you probably followed through on them throughout the day. So you feel that you had a really productive and day that was in alignment with what you intended to do. And so then that makes you want to do it again the next day. So you always want to make sure that you have all three parts. So maybe another example for working out, maybe you keep on missing, or maybe let's use one that's maybe more common from my experience. I used to be in the fitness nutrition coaching space. Maybe you're new to tracking calories and you keep on forgetting to track calories because you've never tracked calories in your life and you eat food without tracking calories your whole life, right? So you're obviously going to pair tracking calories with either cooking your food or doing your meal prep. In this case, let's say you're making your meal on its own. So you need to have the cue or the trigger that reminds you, hey, do this thing now. So if you had a big whiteboard on your refrigerator that said, don't forget to track your calories, and then you had your scale somewhere where you could visibly see it, then all of a sudden, when you go to the fridge, because you're already going to go to the fridge to get food, you see the big sign that says, don't forget to track your calories. Oh yeah, before I eat this and before I make this, I should probably weigh it and track everything so I can stay in line with my goals. And then afterwards, you stayed on track with tracking all your calories, and maybe you lost a pound that week. And then that's the reward. You're like, ooh, okay, this is maybe tough, but I am actually seeing the results that I'm wanting to see that I haven't been seeing before. So always make sure that the behavior that you pair it with, that it makes sense, right? And when it makes sense, if you were wanting to remember to track calories and you put a note on your bed, I don't know, like you had a note on your bed that told you don't forget to track calories, and then you see that when you go to bed, you're like, oh no, I forgot to track calories all day, right? Like you want to make sure that it makes sense, the behaviors that you match it with. And then don't forget the cue. So many people I find can remember, like, okay, I'm going to pair it with a behavior, and they're like, I forgot to do it. I'd be like, okay, what was your cue? Oh, I forgot the cue. I'm a big fan of sticky notes personally, because it's very visible. You could see it and makes your life easy. You won't always have to have sticky notes in your life. Once it becomes a behavior, you won't need it. But while you're trying to create a new behavior, you need some sort of cue, right? To tell you, do this thing now. And then acknowledge the reward from it. So in doing this helps you make sure that you're following the good habits that you're wanting to break or you're wanting to form, and that also the same thing could be used for breaking any bad habits too. So making sure that we're aware of this, as well as some of those other practices for stopping self-sabotage. These practices combined together can make you really, really good. I do want to say that the first step is the awareness, right? So I don't expect you guys to be perfect leaving this training. So if you realized after you self-sabotage and you're like, oh shit, I totally forgot to take 3 mindful breaths and connect with my ego, and I did not do my diversion tactics, and then you're like journaling about your experience, that is the first step, is the awareness of like, oh, I had a tool and I didn't use the tool. Okay, next time, can I use the tool, right? But that's also why I said put a sticky note somewhere where you know you're typically stressed, where you know you're going to self-sabotage, so that way you have some sort of cue to help you remember to do that thing. But once again, if you mess up, the awareness that you messed up, that's step one. Then the next step is, of course, okay, how can I catch myself, even if it's like, oh, I'm opening the fridge to overindulge, or I'm going to make eat the 5th cookie of the day, even though I've already had 4, and that's probably enough. I'm probably content from that. Can you catch yourself while you're in that action right away and choose to like, hey, actually, I'm not going to do that. So know that it comes in layers, and that's totally okay. I see someone said in the chat, love the idea in this process. Yay, awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Okay, we don't have any more on Facebook. A couple of people said they have to finish watching the recording, but that's all I see on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook and you have a question, go ahead and pop them in the chat now so we can get those taken care of. I think you brought up a really great point, Maddy, because I mean, not only do people have a tendency to over expect things of themselves, so breaking it down into those super steps is super important as far as long-term progress goes, but also looking at it from a different perspective. A lot of the times people think that, like you said in the beginning, they need to be just more strict or more, better at what they're doing, but it's not that. And it's not even motivation, it's implementing these steps. So these tools and these systems, which eventually becomes habits. And that's how you sustain progress long-term. It has zero to do with motivation. I can tell you that. All right. Anybody can tell you that. It has zero to do with motivation.
Yeah, if we're always relying on our motivation, we're going to fall up short a lot of times.
A lot of times.
A fun agreement, there's like 4 agreements from like shamanic work, but one of them that I find super helpful, that maybe you guys would also like to adopt this agreement for yourself, is to be impeccable with your work. Mm-hmm. And this one has helped me so much with my self-discipline, because if I say, okay, I'm going to wake up in the morning to do my yoga practice, and I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, I just want to sleep. I remember, wait, be impeccable with your word. Last night you said you would get up and practice. So I get out of bed and I practice, right? If you said, okay, I'm going to work out at the end of the day, and the end of the day comes, you're like, oh, I don't want to work out. Wait, but you said that you were going to work out at the end of the day. So don't you want to be impeccable with your word? And just kind of keep that in the back of your mind for like everything that you do. Like, can I be impeccable with my own word to myself? To myself, of course, we want to do that to others too, but with ourselves, if we can't even be honest and true to ourselves, we're doing ourselves a great disservice. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Can I be impeccable with my word and what I said that I would do?
If you have to use a sticky note until you can remember to do that, use a sticky note. They really do help. I use them a lot.
Yes, Ego's name is Grace. I like that. That's a good one. Breathing brings you peace. Cool. Yeah, so that those 3 deep yogic breaths that we took, I encourage you guys to breathe like that more often. It's like one of the most basic fundamental breaths, but for good reason, because it's one of the most practical ones that you could use anywhere, anytime. And can you check in with your breath every day and throughout the day? Can you breathe more deeply? And see if you can breathe more deeply and slowly. And a lot of us humans, and especially in today's world, we're constantly getting sucked into either holding our breath and we're like not breathing, or like taking really short, shallow, like chest breaths. And this keeps us in our sympathetic nervous system and our stressed out state. And so if we could take the time to slowly, deeply breathe and check in with our breath, like throughout the day, every day, like, ooh, can I breathe more deeply? This helps us connect more to our parasympathetic, our more calm state, our more focused state. And you'll just feel that more calm, relaxed sensation that you felt after just 3 breaths. You could continue that for longer, even when your eyes are not closed. So it's a really powerful practice. It's one that I constantly go back to again and again every day. Like, okay, am I breathing deeply? Can I breathe more deeply? And then use that as a tool.
Yeah, it's a great. Thanks for sharing that, Maddie.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We don't have anything else on Facebook. So, those of you that are here on Zoom with us, did you have any further questions tonight? If not, we can get things wrapped up and send everyone on their way in the middle of the week on Wednesday night. All right. No, just a thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you guys. I appreciate your time tonight. It's been fun.
It has. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for those of you that joined on Facebook and for those of you here. And thank you, Maddie, for sharing so much value and information. I think those are things they can start implementing right away to, help get yourself out of some of the situations that you may find yourself in. So thanks again so much for joining us. And otherwise, we'll see everybody on Monday night for Monday's training. All right.
Perfect.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.